Welcome to the gathering at the Cosmic Fire 2024 Summit, a celebration of the source of our awakening. Whether you were nurtured by earth-based wisdom your entire life, you were blessed to meet a teacher along your path, or you are listening here today on the threshold of something new, each one of us has been gifted an opportunity to awaken more deeply in every moment and to be of sacred service. Together, we are embarking on an amazing adventure. Around the Cosmic Fire, honored shamanic earth-based healers and teachers from around the globe will share their stories of awakening, each offering beauty and illuminating wisdom and medicine ways that may be our most valuable natural resource. This gathering is brought to you by Shamans Directory, an online global platform dedicated to bringing shamanic earth-based services to the world's doorstep. At Shamans Directory, we are committed to honoring the Earth's living lineages, the medicine people and communities who invite our human family to heal and to awaken to a better, more kind, more sustainable way forward. I'm Tricia Bennett, one of your hosts at the Cosmic Fire, and I am delighted to welcome Rosita Arvigo. Hello and welcome, Rosita.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
It is just wonderful to have you here. So before we begin, for those of you who do not know Rosita yet and her work, I'm going to take a moment to let you know a little bit more about her. Rosita is a native of Chicago, a naturopathic physician, herbalist, international lecturer, and author with an obsession and passion for the medicinal plants of the Americas and abdominal therapy. She has lived in remote areas of Mexico and Belize for more than 40 years. There she studied with many traditional healers, including Don Eligio Ponti, the renowned Maya shaman of Belize, and midwife herbalist Hortense Robinson, both of whom were recipients of the coveted National Living Treasure Award. Rosita and her husband, Dr. Greg Shropshire, founded the Ish Shell Tropical Research Center in Belize, an organization dedicated to the preservation and study of medicinal plants of the rainforest. They also founded the Belize Association of Traditional Healers, Bush Medicine Camp for Children, the Rainforest Medicine Trail, and Rainforest Remedies, an herbal concentrate company, and the Belize Ethnobotany Project with Dr. Michael Valek of the New York Botanical Garden. Rosita is also the founder of the Abdominal Therapy Collective, which trains practitioners in the Don Eligio Maya abdominal technique and Maya spiritual healing. Now retired from clinical practice, Rosita focuses on teaching and writing. She divides her time between Belize, Mexico, and Chicago. So that feels like about 7 lifetimes worth of work in one lifetime.
You don't realize it until somebody rattles it all off at once.
It's just astounding. So we are honored to have you with us as a wisdom keeper of the Maya tradition and an ambassador of the plant kingdom. So welcome again. And our topic for the conversation today is 13 years with a Maya shaman.
Right.
So I'm wondering if you would be willing to start by sharing a little bit about your own awakening story and how you came to this path that you are now walking.
Sure. When I graduated from the College of Naturopathy with my husband at the same time in 1982, we were both looking for a place, a country where we could practice alternative medicine without fear of repercussions from the government. Many people have forgotten or don't realize that the 1980s in America was a very trying and difficult time for natural healing and alternative physicians because the forces that be were kind of chasing us down, closing us down. And anyway, there was a lot of fear in the environment over being a natural healer, a herbalist. So I had already been in Belize for a few years, and I decided that would be a great place to go. And because, again, it was the 1980s, there was a lot of turmoil in Central America at that time. And so our families were very, very upset that we would be leaving America after graduation and walking into what they thought was pure political chaos in Central America. Well, we thought and thought, we consternated, and I decided that I would begin to pray on it. And the day that I began to turn it over and pray, I had this dream. And in the dream, I see myself on a bus in Chicago where we were at the time. And I don't know why I'm on the bus. I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where to get off. I'm basically lost. And I'm sitting on a seat that is facing another seat in the front of the bus. And there's an elderly woman across from me. She has a newspaper on her lap. She picks up the newspaper and snaps it open so that the headlines are very bold and very clear. And the headlines say, "Have faith." Nothing more than that, have faith. So we decide we will go to live in Central America because we know that Belize is a nation where traditional healing, alternative medicine, nobody knew it was alternative in Belize. It was their primary source still of medical care was from traditional healers. So we went in 1982 after graduation, and in 1985, I began looking for someone who could teach me about the local medicinal plants. I had been a herbalist already for 20 or 30 years, mostly with North American and especially herbs in the city of Chicago. Fascinated me that there could be such tremendous biodiversity in a modern city. But Chicago has more medicinal plants than any area I've ever been in all of my years of study. So we decided that I began searching, and I had a couple of contacts that just absolutely didn't work out. And I kept hearing the name Don Eligio Panti of San Antonio. He's the person you have to go find. Go find the old bush doctor in San Antonio. And they referred to him as numero uno, number one, and el mero, the very, very one. The very one and number one. Now, I already spoke Spanish because I had lived for 7 years during the Vietnam War in Mexico, because my partner at the time was a war resister. So we went to live in Mexico to escape the Vietnam War. There I learned Spanish, and there I had many long relationships with village healers and herbalists, and they were not unique. There was not like, oh, there's this fabulous woman or man and they're 50 miles from here. No, it was at that time in Mexico and Central America, every household had a traditional healer. Not every village, every household. Usually it was the elder, an auntie, or an uncle. So I'm trying to figure out, how can I go see Don Eligio? And then I hear stories like, oh, no, don't go anywhere near him. You know, he's a lecher. You know, all he does is molest women, and you know that he delves in the black arts. You know, he's a witch doctor, right? Don't go see Don Eligio. Well, I know that people sometimes saw me in that light, and that never scared me at all. I just felt like this is what people who delve in the realms of spiritual healing and herbology, that's something that we have to live with, is this misunderstanding and judgment. So still trying to figure out, how am I going to get there? And so one day I come home from the market and I have a bag of mangoes in my hand, and I already have, my clinic is already open in San Ignacio. I've been working the clinic with my husband now for 2 years. And there's this old man sitting on my porch. And I thought he had come to see me as a patient. So I said in Spanish, "Good afternoon. I'll open my clinic and I'll be with you as soon as I can. Please come in, get out of the sun." So he stood up and he only reached the top of my right of my chest. And he held out his hand. And the moment I touched his hand, it was electrifying. First of all, the physical sensation was of a really hard working person, calloused, hard, strong hand. And he was already at this time 90 years old. And his shake, the shake of his hand was strong. And then there was an electrical moment where something indescribable passed through me. And I just didn't know what it was. It kind of just went by. So I invited him in and I get everything ready and I bring him into the clinic. And I said, "So tell me, what's your problem?" And he says, "Oh, no, I'm not here. I'm not here as a client. I'm here because I heard that there is an American herbalist in town. And I come to see if you have flor de tilo. Flor de tilo is linden flower." He said that tea is so sure and so sure for helping the elderly and babies sleep. And he tells me the story. He was a very funny person. He tells me the story of how since his wife died, there's nobody to hold him at nighttime. And in the middle of the night, I get cold and I try to grab my blanket, and the blanket falls out of my hammock and I roll over and my back is exposed. And he said, when my wife was alive, I didn't have a wool blanket. I had my blanket of guts. And she would pull me close to her and caress me and all night long, hugging and kissing. And now that my wife is gone, I can't sleep. So please, do you have any flor de tilo? And as fate would have it, it's one of my favorite herbs. And I could not leave Chicago without my supply of linden flower tea, because again, it is so calming and so safe when we feel a little bit anxious, upset. It's good for babies who have been frightened or babies who don't sleep, and so wonderful as well as a calming nerving for the elderly. Very safe, very effective. My favorite type of remedy. So I gave him a little bag of linden flower tea. And I said, "So where are you from?" And he said, "Oh, San Antonio." And I was about to say, "By the way, do you know Don Eligio?" He said, "I'm Don Eligio Panti from San Antonio." And I nearly dropped my glass jar. And I said, "Don Eligio Panti, I've been trying to contact you. I really, really need someone who can teach me about the herbs here in Belize. Is there any chance I could come to visit you?" And he said, come to see me. There I will be, neither more nor less than you see in front of you," which is so charming in Spanish. It was, "Ven, si venir a verme, allí voy a estar, ni más ni menos que ves aquí. There I will be, neither more nor less than you see right in front of you." So I gave him his bag of linden flower tea, and he looked up at my shelves of herbs in glass jars. And he said, "You have a problem." I said, "I do." He said, "Yeah, your herbs are molding." I said, "Exactly. I was just going to ask you that." And he said, "You can't keep them in glass jars because look at them." He said, "Do you see the moisture inside the jar, and it's falling down on top?" And there definitely, I looked and how could I possibly have missed that the inside of the jar is all misty and that moisture is dropping down on the herbs. We're in the tropics. So he said, "Don't keep them in glass jars, put them in paper bags, and every week or so, set them out in the sun on the hottest time of the day. and they'll stay dry and they won't get any mold on them. Big problem of mine solved in a moment of great wisdom, knowledge, and experience. So I said, well, wonderful, thank you so much. And he left. And I said, may I come visit you? Yes, come. So the next week, I'm trying to figure out, I'm not a driver. I never have driven in my whole life, never want to. And I'm perfectly at peace with that. So my husband makes me a map. Now we're on our little farm, which is 10 miles outside of the town where my clinic is. To get to San Antonio, I have to cross the river on foot, walk a mile through a jungle trail, and get on a logging road and walk 5 miles. And I'm perfectly happy to do this. It sounds to me like a great adventure. But because I'm always lost, all my life I've been lost. I have dreams about being lost, like the one I just told you. So my husband accompanied me to the road to make sure I didn't end up in Guatemala, because we're only 5 miles from Guatemala where we live. So he set my foot on the road and I walked the 5 miles straight to San Antonio. When I arrive on his doorstep, it's already 10:30 in the morning because it's a 90-minute walk, about 5 miles. And he's not there, but his entire front yard is full of people waiting for him to arrive. And I go to see a little shop that's just in front of his house. Now his house is 3 little houses. There's the cement house with the door closed, and that's where people are gathered in the courtyard all around that cement house. Next to that is a wooden house. And then next to that is a house of sticks and thatch roof. It reminded me of the house of the 3 little pigs. There was a house of straw, there was a house of wood, and there was a house of bricks. And he lived in the house of bricks, but the house of straw is where he had lived for 50 years. It was his little hut made of sticks and thatched leaves where he and his wife lived for 50 years and where he saw all of his patients. So I sit there and I'm listening to the stories of all of these people who came from Honduras, Nicaragua, Guatemala, local areas close by San Antonio, and we're all waiting for El Mero, El Número Uno, El Curandero. So finally, here he comes, trudging along right around 11:30 in the morning, and he's got a huge sack of medicine on his back and 2 sacks of leaves in each hand. And the sack of medicine is in a basket that is attached to his forehead with a woven band that he wove, and the basket that he wove. And it's full of vines, roots, and barks. The 2 bags are both full of leaves for herbal baths. So he comes trudging along, and I get up to take the basket off of his back just to offer a hand. And he says, oh, gracias, thank you. Sit outside, I'll take you one by one. I'll get to everybody today, I promise. But first, I have to have my breakfast. It's already 11:30, and he's been out in the bush since dawn, collecting herbs and medicine all by himself. So finally, his granddaughter brings him a big bowl of corn atole. That's his breakfast. He drinks his atole. It's like a corn cereal that people in Central America have had as food since ancient times. When he takes his atole, he opens the door and people go in one by one. And this is what I hear: whispering and then laughing and laughing and laughing. And I hear someone say, oh, Don Eligio, stop. I'm sick. I can't laugh so hard. You're making my stomach hurt. Then here comes Don Eligio by himself, trudging along. He has a cane by this time, and he goes to the little house of straw, and he has a plastic bag with him. And he goes into his bags and he gets a handful of this dry herb, a handful of that dry herb, and he takes some herbs off the ceiling and stuffs that in the bag. Then he trudges back into the house, hands the bag of herbs to the client, and then the next person comes in and the next, until finally he must have seen 12 or 15 people. And I'm the very, very last person. And at one point, he took one of those people into the thatch hut and sat that person on a wooden chair that had a very serious slant. It was slanted at about maybe 40 degrees, so you were almost laying back. And he did this fascinating abdominal massage while the person was sitting in the chair. And I was just so utterly enthralled, enchanted, and fascinated with this delightful old man and his very, very busy practice at 90 years old. Finally, it's my turn. So I go in. He doesn't remember me, doesn't recognize me. And he said, "Where are you from?" San Ignacio. My Spanish was very, very good. People didn't really know that I was not local unless they asked me. So I said, "I'm from San Ignacio." And he said, "What's your problem?" I said, like you told me last week, I'm not here as a patient. I'm here to visit you. And if you remember, I'm Rosita, the lady who gave you the linden flower." And he said, "Oh, the linden flower. Thank you. Thank you. I've been sleeping like a baby." And he curls his hands up like that and mimics how he's sleeping. And he said, "So what can I do for you today?" And I said, "Well, I came to ask you if you would take me on as your student. Could I come and just study the herbs?" First of all, I had no idea that Don Eligio was the Shaman, the Maya shaman. I did not know that. I only knew that he had a troubled reputation, that he was a famous herbalist and a very effective healer. I did not know Don Eligio was the shaman. "No, no, I can't teach you." "Why not?" "You're a gringa, and everything I teach you will be lost up there." And I can still remember that finger. "Everything I teach you will be lost up there." And he said, "Anyway, you don't have a sastun." "What's a sastun?" "That's the plaything of the Maya spirits. And when you have a sastun, I can teach you, even though the Maya spirits don't speak English." Oh my goodness, how do I get a sastun? I have no idea. So I just sat with him. I swept the floor of his house. I swept the courtyard. I asked, could I go out and gather firewood? I gathered firewood for him. I filled his bucket. There's no running water in any of these houses. His entire water supply is in a 5-gallon pig bucket in the corner. So I filled his bucket of water, swept around, and finally it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I have to get home before dark. "So may I come see you next week?" "Of course." So it turns out that I go back every single week for an entire year. And he still says, "No, no, I can't teach you." But he's happy to accept my assistance. I did many different things. One day I was there and I gave enema to 2 female clients, and he did not want to do this. He was reluctant, and he said, "Can you do this?" "Yes, I'll do that." Another time, there was a little 4-year-old girl with a very serious cough, and it had been raining, so he didn't have a chance to go out and collect his usual herbs. So he said, "Do you know the epazote?" And I said, "Yep, I know the epazote." I could see he was a little bit impressed. "So can you go collect it?" And I had been walking around the village looking to see what medicinal plants I could recognize from Mexico. And there were several. So I knew where the epazote was growing. So I brought that home and he was impressed. And that was part of the herbal formula for this girl who had both intestinal parasites and a very chronic cough. Collected wood, swept the courtyard, just whatever I could do to be of assistance. Now a whole year goes by and I arrive on his doorstep before he goes off to the bush. Usually he came back from the bush every day, 10:30 or 11, and he would go off by himself to collect his vines, roots, herbs, and leaves for the herbal baths that he recommended. So this day I got a ride and I got there at around 6:30 in the morning. And as he opened his front door, to go collect medicine, I'm standing on the doorstep. And he gave me a look of exhaustion and disdain. And I was crushed. And I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm never coming back. Obviously, he's tired of seeing me show up every week asking the same question. Will you teach me? No, no, I won't. So I said, well, to myself, this is my last day. So he said, I don't have time for you today. I'm very busy. I've had so many patients. I haven't been able to harvest my own corn. My corn is going to seed. And if it rains, my whole family will be hungry. I don't have time for you. And I said, well, let me help you harvest corn. And then that same look of disdain. And he says, you don't know how to harvest corn. You're from Chicago. And I said, Don Alicia, I lived 7 years in remote Mexico. I know how to harvest corn. Let's go. I'll help you. So he gave me a basket just like his around my forehead. And we walked 90 minutes to his milpa. 90 minutes for a 90-year-old man. And we get to where he said his cornfield is. And all I can see is jungle. I don't see any cornfield. And he said, on your belly. So we get down on our bellies and we crawl through about 30 feet of jungle. And when we come out of that, here is a mountain, a proper mountainside covered in beautiful corn and beans and pumpkins, all ready for harvest. Corn, the three sisters, corn, beans, and pumpkins that he had planted by himself, cultivated, and was now going to carry home basket by basket. Because now he was going blind from cataracts, he could no longer handle a horse. So that's why he was carrying everything home in these baskets. So he points a row to a row of corn, and I start hauling off the ears, putting them in the basket. And every other row or so, I dump my basket, and my pile is growing and growing. And about 10:30, 11 in the morning, we're meeting. He's coming this way on a row, and I'm coming that way. Now we're face to face. And he looks at my pile of corn, and he's very, very impressed with my pile of corn. And he says, are you married? I said, yes, Don Alijo, I'm married, and I have 3 children. And he goes, oh, oh. So we continue. Now it's 11:30, and we're at the very top of his milpa, at the top of the mountain. And we take a break, and I have an orange. I peel the orange, and I give him half. Now, he takes the orange from me, and then he stands up. When Don Alijo stood up, because we're at the top of a mountain, the sunrise came up behind him. Now he's standing in a full medallion of golden light. And it is sparkling, the rays of divine light just pouring all over. It was like a vision. Excuse me. And he said, what is it that you want? Tell me, what is it that you want? And I said, Don Alijo, I just want to learn about medicinal plants. I promise to be of help to you. I promise not to be a bother. If you would just teach me about the medicinal plants of this country. Then he said, do you promise if I take the time to teach you, you will take care of my people when I'm gone? Oh, yes, I promise. And so that was the day. That was the day when my apprenticeship began, and it was the day when I was about to give up. I wasn't coming back ever again. So on the way home, we're carrying, each of us carrying our basket of corn. Now he's pointing out this little plant, anal. You see the red flower. That vine over there, that's man vine. That's what we use for men who can't or wish they could more. The man vine. So all the way home, he's pointing out herbs and vines and different tree barks, and it's music to my ears. But it's also an encyclopedia that's being poured down on me all at once. And so then from there, I returned every single week for 3 nights and 4 days for 7 years. And that's where little by little, I learned that Don Eligio is not just a traditional healer. He is not only a herbalist, but he is also a spiritual healer. He is the Shaman, one of the last living shamans of Central America, of the Maya people, and one of the last links to the benevolent Maya spirits, who are the oversoul of the Maya people, and the authorities to whom Don Eligio always addressed his prayers, the deities, really. The benevolent Maya spirits are the deities to whom Don Eligio always addressed his prayer. So what I learned is that Maya medicine, through Don Eligio's lineage, Don Eligio's lineage was a strange one. His father was a necromancer, meaning that he did evil magic. His grandfather was a benevolent healer who was also a shaman, but his father decided that he could get more rich if he did evil magic. He could charge more. So that was a strange history for Don Eligio. And that lineage of Maya healers recognizes that there are spiritual and physical realms, and that ailments can be both spiritual and physical. And he did not separate the two, but he would always ask specific questions of ailments. He would say, for instance, if he thought that these chronic headaches were not due to a physical ailment, but a spiritual ailment, he would ask the person, do you experience bad dreams? Do you feel like there's something on your shoulder? Do you feel something on your back? And if they said yes, then he would get out his sastun. The sastun is like a crystal ball. And that is the magic object that gives the Maya shaman his connection to the Maya spirits. So Don Eligio would put that little crystal ball, sastun. Sas means light, tune is stone. So it's a light stone of light. So he would put that sastun into a little clay jar. And that clay jar was teleported by the Maya spirits, as was the sastun. Both of these objects are teleported from the Maya spirits once they realize that you are honest, true, and sincere, that you do not lie, cheat, or steal, and that your goal in life is healing and service. And that was Don Eligio's primary drive in life, was healing and service. So he would ask the sastun, tell me, and mentioning the person's name. Is this natural or is this evil? Is this natural or is this evil? Then he would put the little sastun in the person's hand and they would shake it like dice. And he took the person to the doorway because he was going blind at this time, so that the light would shine on the person's hand and on the crystal ball. And he would roll it around a little bit in their palm. And what he could read were lines and bubbles. And the way the lines and the bubbles configured after rolling around inside that little clay jar told him if this was a spiritual or a physical disease. Now, spiritual diseases are like envy, fright, grief, anger, and evil spirits. So the very, very first day that I returned to Don Eligio's clinic to be his student, I didn't know I was the shaman's apprentice. I was student of medicinal plants. The very, very first day, the first client who arrives is from Guatemala. And I'm sitting with Don Eligio in his little cement house, hot as Hades. And we hear a car pull up. And Don Eligio right away perks up and he's in the seat and he said, this is something. This is something. So 4 doors open and 4 doors close, means there's a lot of people getting out of this car. So here come 2 burly men with a woman between them that they're dragging. They're holding her by her arms and she can't stand up. So they're dragging her into Don Eligio's clinic. And they sit her down and she can barely hold herself up in the seat. And they explain that their mother has a curse. Someone in their village in Guatemala got angry with her because she said that the son of that family who gave her the curse was not worthy to marry into her family. The son of that family wanted to marry her daughter. And she said that family is low class and not worthy to marry into my family. So that mother got really angry at her. And the black magic done was by putting some powder onto her food that had been enchanted with an evil spell. So she sent her a plate of food with this powder sprinkled all over it, which apparently is tasteless. So once she ate that food with this evil spell embedded in it, she went mad and crazy. And they called the priest. The priest came to the house 3 times and said, I give up. I don't know what to do. She had gone absolutely mad. They locked her in her room because she was tearing down curtains and ripping up things, slapping at her husband, slapping at her children, screaming, and in the middle of the night screaming. It really, you would think it looked like a true insanity and madness. And I do believe she would have gone to an insane asylum had it not been for Don Eligio's intervention. So they tell this story, and while I'm listening to this story, this lady is drooling and growling like an animal. It was the most frightening thing, and I tell you, the hair in the back of my neck stood right up. And from that day forward, I know when I'm in the presence of an evil spirit. The hair on the back of my neck stands up, and something inside of me shudders. And that's exactly the feeling that I felt there. So he said to me, you go there, go into the other house, the palm thatched house, bring me the coals from the fire. He's going to do incense. So I get the coals and he says, start a fire. He yells at me, start a fire. So I start a fire and he comes in and he puts this herb that he used specifically for these conditions that he called maldad, which is evil, when one person intentionally does evil to another. It's called skunk root, paiche in Maya, Chiococa alba, actually in Latin. So he puts a big handful of this foul smelling root. It's a fascinating plant. The root is very deep, black, and hidden, just like the occult sciences are deep and dark, and they reek. They reek like a skunk, bad odor. And above is a beautiful green vine with a cross pattern, white flowers and white berries. Could there be a more clear sign of a plant with this blessing to rid people of evil magic? The white, in the light over darkness, the fact that the root is occult and hidden, just like the dark arts, and that this symbol, this universal symbol of divinity, the cross, is over that, and the white flowers. So it's a beautiful plant, but it stinks. It stinks like a skunk. So we got that boiling on the stove, and I bring him the coals, and he drops copal. His healing resin for spiritual ailments was a mixture of copal and rosemary, dried rosemary. So he sprinkles that over the coals that I have in a rusty old coffee can that's held by an old wire. It's got, the coffee can has holes in it so that the smoke can come out. And he tells me to walk around 9 circles around this woman carrying the copal while I pray. And he says, any prayer, any prayer. So I'm saying Our Father and Hail Mary again and again. That's all I know. In the meantime, he has a vial of holy water from the Catholic Church. I'm sorry. Lots of talking makes my throat dry. And he begins to sprinkle this lady with this holy water while I'm gathering, taking the copal around and around. Then he tells me to go get the Rio tea, pour it into a gourd bowl, and bring another gourd bowl. So I get the gourd, 2 gourds, and then he tells me to pour it back and forth. He said to energize it and cool it, pouring it back and forth into the air. So when it's cool enough, I give it to her in this gourd, and she takes the whole thing and goes gloop, 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 gloop. And as soon as she got that tea down, she went into a shudder. And when she shuddered, it really felt like something flew off of her. And she looked me right in the eye for the first time because she was not lucid at all. There was no eye contact. She looked me in the eye and a tear rolled down both cheeks. And she said, "Gracias, Senora. Thank you." And we gave her another gourd of that tea. She was much, much better when she left. And Don Eligio sent them home with more copal and more Zorio tea. And they should come back in 9 days. Well, she was able to stand up and walk out to the taxi cab. 9 days they came back and they told the story of how she went apparently mad 3 more times after that. And it wasn't like a final cure, but after the 3rd time and the 3rd dose of that tea and more copal, it never came back. Now she's sitting in front of us with her hair combed and her clothing, everything looking normal. And she's telling Don Eligio her story and how grateful she is. And then the son says to Don Eligio, "Now I want you to do to that woman what she did to my mother." And Don Eligio puts up both hands like this, like a shield. And he said, "No, never, not in this house." And then he's so adorable. He said, "Listen, never, ever was there anyone who was carried, who walked, never, ever was there anyone who walked in here and had to be carried out. But many were those who were carried in and were able to walk out." That was so brilliant. It was so perfect and so succinct. So I want to back up to that first day where she came, because that really, truly frightened me. I felt like I had jumped into something I didn't understand. And it was so much more than I expected. And I'm going to spend the night with Don Eligio. The plan is I would be there 3 nights and 4 days. And as I said, I did that for 7 years. And then for the next 6 years, I went every day once a week for every day for the rest of the 13 years. And so that first night, sleeping in Don Eligio's hut in a hammock, and he's in the other room on another hammock, and there's only a cotton curtain between us. I'm laying in the hammock and I'm really, really scared. And I'm saying to myself, this isn't what I signed up for. And then he told me, that lady was possessed by the devil. That was the Prince of Darkness himself. He was here in her. So you were in the presence of the Prince of Darkness. So I'm in the hammock thinking, the Prince of Darkness, evil magic. Oh my God, that poor woman and that madness, the way she looked was so scary, and that growling. So I said, no, I don't know if I can do this. It's a lot more than I thought was going to happen. So then I have a dream. And you asked me my awakening. This was my awakening. In this dream, I see myself in the hammock, all kind of curled up and tight and frightened. And all of a sudden, I am surrounded by 4 enormous angels. They're like each 12 feet tall, and their wingspan is about 15 feet each. They're enormous. They're like archangels. And I look around, and the first one I see on my right is the angel of Kopal. And she's kind of like amber light, sparkling with rainbow light. And on this side over here is the angel of Rue. One of the herbs Don Alicio mixed in a little bit of water for the lady was rue and water with the little stone of Esquipulas, a little white stone that they use to ward off evil magic. So while we're waiting for the skunk root to boil, Don Alicio used the holy water in the glass, and he squeezed a little piece of rue and a couple of grains of that white stone. And that's what she drank before the skunk root. So I see the angel of Kopal on this side. I see the angel of Rue, glowing greenish white light. And then I see the angel of the stone of Esquipulas, pure light. And behind me is Saint Michael, representing Zorio, the skunk root. And he's dressed in black leather. And he's got black tight jacket, tight pants, before tight pants were in. This is 1985. Got real tight black leather pants on and a black jacket and a golden shield and a long spear. And he's behind me like a guardian, like this. And it's almost as if he's saying, go ahead, just try it. Take one step towards her and see what happens. And I just felt so, not a word was said. Nothing, not a word, only this incredibly calming, protective vision of these spirits that are there. These plant spirits, the Kopal, the presence, the divine presence of light and positivity in Don Alicio's little clinic. And I never worried again. And after that, I saw hundreds of people with evil magic on them. And I was able to treat them myself after 7 years, though. 7 years before I felt confident to step away a little bit and begin to integrate Don Alicio's practice into my practice. 7 years, 4 years before I ever went to collect herbs by myself. The only time I did within that 4 years, it was an emergency with a baby with bad dysentery who would have died without it. And I collected the wrong bark. And I showed Don Alicio the bark that I collected. He said, that's not the one you needed, but that works too. And I thought, oh, thank God. But that was so frightening. So I never collected anything in 3 years after that, but I was blessed that it wasn't the right bark, but it wasn't something that harmed the baby. It also helped the baby. It just the other one would have been stronger. The baby did get well. Baby got well in 3 days. Don Alicio said with the other bark, baby would have been well in a day. So nothing terrible happened. So that protection, I was truly protected. So the awakening for me was, and I still think about it, that little hut, that little cement hot house, that house was 10 by 10 with 2 rooms in it. Right on the edge of the road. There was not 5 inches between his window and the road. And the road, that was a busy road that went up to the mountain pine ridge and brought down mahogany and pine logs by the hundreds of trucks every month. So it was really busy and dusty and hot. So how was it that the Maya spirits, the earth spirits, were so present in that little house? And I think it was, first of all, Don Alicio never learned to read and write. He never went to school. He said to me one day that you're writing things down all the time. And I said, yes, because, I need to remember things. It's so much. And he said, that stick and that piece of paper, that makes your mind weak. I said, what do you mean makes my mind weak? And he said, I never had a stick. I never had a piece of paper. I never learned to read or write. And he said, I'll show you. Write my name. Write Don Eligio Ponte. Put it on that paper with that stick. So I write Don Eligio Ponte. He says, show it to me. I show it to me. You see, it looks like a chicken walked over it to me. So I think that because he was still so much a part of the natural, uneducated world, I believe that that is our natural state. That were we still in that natural state of deep connection to the spirit realm, to the spiritual forces that surround us, like those four angels just showed up for me, that I believe we could, and probably at one time we're all able to have that type of communion, that type of intimate relationship with the spirit realm. But we have stepped away from it and walked into libraries. Now we have computers. So yes, Don Eligio was a true shaman, and that did, of course, that brought spirits to his house. There were one thing I didn't remember to say is that before that dream started, I have a whole book of dreams that happened to me during my apprenticeship, and there are many, and every dream is heralded by earth spirits. And what they do, they jump in the hammock with you, and their little furry hands go like that, and then they swing the hammock, and you don't know what's happening. And so that night I feel all this little furry and hot breaths on my face, and I'm half asleep and half awake. My heart starts to pound, and then the hammock starts swinging back and forth, back until it feels like I'm upside down in the hammock and I'm about to fall onto the cement floor. And at that point is when the dream vision begins. And many, many times, I actually even saw a little elf one night, which was so cute because I think that my unconscious mind sees elves and fairies the way Western fairy tales show us, right? So in this dream one night, is maybe 5 or 6 years into the apprenticeship, I'm just nothing special. I'm just sleeping in my hammock in Don Eligio's house after a day of really, really hard work collecting medicine in the forest. And it was hard labor. This was pick and shovel work, 5 or 6 hours every day with Don Eligio. And it got to where he wouldn't do it any longer unless I was there because of his cataracts, and he was going blind. He was afraid he would fall and nobody would know where he was, and then he might die alone in the forest. So this night I'm just sleeping in the hammock, and I kind of wake up again. The hammock is moving. Somebody's pulling my blanket. Someone's tickling my feet. I get this surge of energy goes through my body. And all of a sudden, I'm sort of half awake, but still really deeply asleep. I see these two little feet in red felt shoes wrap around my belly, and these two little hands, pudgy, furry little hands around my chest, and I feel a little face right on my neck. And now, after so many dream visions, and I feel the little face, and the hand has a little red jacket. So here's little green pants, little green felt boots, and a little red jacket. And I feel this little face, and I'm saying to this dream vision, to this elf, and I said, I'm not afraid of you. I'm going to open my eyes and I'm going to look you right in the face. I know who you are now. I know there's nothing to be afraid. So I'm going to get a really good look. So I turn around and I open my eyes, and the little creature goes right in my face and really loud. I nearly fell out of the hammock. Now I'm wide awake and he's gone. So yes, how does that happen? A little tiny thatch hut, very, very humble, in a little cabin on a roadside carrying logs from the pine forest. Giant trucks going by, and yet there is an old Maya shaman. I always felt Don Eligio looked like what the Chinese say the greatest people in your village will look like no more than a turtle in the mud. Don Eligio was that turtle in the mud who was a divinely blessed being. And I believe that he was able to be so close to the spirits because of never having suffered through books and education, only one reason, and of his lineage, his father and his grandfather, and because he was truly dedicated to service. Now, I also learned that traditional healers like Don Eligio, and over my 50 years in Central America, I have met many. They share many things in common that Don Eligio had, and Miss Hortense Robinson, the herbal midwife. She too was a spiritual healer. I would say she was a female shaman. They're all funny. They're all very humorous. They love to make people laugh. They all have a very strong spiritual connection, but it may not be a church. And they are extremely generous of spirit. They have generosity of spirit. They love to share their gifts. They love to look after people. It feels to me like a spiritual food, a spiritual sustenance for them to be of service. They care more about the welfare of others than they do themselves. And that, to me, is some of the basic characteristics of a true healer and shaman person. Talked a lot. Sorry.
Wow. No, do not apologize. That story is so enthralling. And, it just is so moving to me every time I hear a story like this. And yours is, every story is unique, but they're just like you said, there are certain characteristics of shaman that are similar. There are certain characteristics of stories like yours that are similar.
That's right.
You weren't really looking. You certainly weren't intending on becoming a shaman. You certainly wanted to learn about plants.
And I was about to leave. There's also that aspect too.
Yeah.
Something so, I don't know, what's the word, spiritual about it. So,
yeah, that you don't get it until you don't want it anymore.
Yeah, there's that.
Really,
willing to give it up.
Yeah, you have to be willing to say, okay, I give up. And then the spirits say, okay, we'll give you a chance. It's just like, you mean, really? I had to go through all that for you to say, okay, I'll give you a chance, but also that for Don Eligio, that he was not expecting you to be the person that would carry on his work. And
many people ask me, they expect me to say, and Don Eligio knew I was coming. He had a dream vision that told him, this American woman will show up on your doorstep. Be good to her. She's going to be your, no, none of that. And it was a full year. And, I don't blame him. I think he was extremely wise. And I asked him one day, many years later, and I said, why did you agree to teach me? It still makes me want to cry. He said, because I recognize that you have a pure heart.
And he couldn't marry you to help him pick his corn because you were already married.
There's that
there was
too.
that too.
There's that too. He was in love with me, and I was in love with him. But he never, ever crossed the line. And he did say one day, he said, I never thought when I finally got a real student who would be here, not just one day and not just a week, that it would be a beautiful woman, that I could have such a wonderful companion, is what he said. And after his wife died, Don Eligio was really a lonely man. He was a very social person. He extremely busy clinic. He might see 100 patients in a week, 100 patients a week up until the age of like 98. only until then did he start to slow down, when the word got out that he was just getting too old. But he lived to be 103.
Mm-hmm.
And until 101, he was still seeing patients because he was hammock ridden. And I still went to see him every single week. And I said, what type, how is it going for you these days? And he said, well, of course, as you can see, I'm neither more nor less, but now all I can do is say prayers for people. So part of his Maya healing was prayers into the pulses. So the Maya people, as part of his lineage, believe that the spirit, the soul, is in the blood. And to touch the spirit, you feel the pulse, which is evidence of the moving blood. So he would say 9 prayers, 3 prayers into the right pulse, and the prayers were all according to the ailment and the symptoms. He taught me probably 18 different prayers to use. And he did pulse diagnosis, which is historical for Maya healers since ancient times. There are records that the Spanish friars left of the Maya medicine people being called the pulse doctors. So the pulse gave him a diagnosis, and then into the pulse, he would say 3 prayers in the right, 3 prayers in the left, and 3 prayers over the forehead. And it was always in a whisper. And as years went by, I came to realize that whispering the prayer was an important aspect of the treatment, because I could almost see the words moving through the person's auric field like light. Beams of light coming out of Don Eligio's mouth as he said those sacred medicine songs, and that they were clearing the energy field of the person he was taking care of. So the spiritual healing became a very, very big part of my practice. It's something I was never able to do before I met Don Eligio, except for the work of Wilhelm Reich that I studied long before I knew Don Eligio, about the muscular armor rings that are holding our long repressed emotions in our muscles of the body. So I was able to help people with emotional disorders by doing Wilhelm Reich's abdominal massage. And Don Eligio's abdominal massage was also a part of his work, but I lost my train of thought. Where was I? Oh, spiritual healing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with the prayers, the spiritual baths, collecting plants, it was always important in the jungle with Don Eligio, every single plant, herb, vine, bark, root that came from the earth had to be removed with care, reverence, and prayer. And he always taught me to stand first for a moment to connect to the spirit of the plant. Once you feel that connection, you say the prayer of thanksgiving and faith to the spirit of the plant, or the spirit of the plant will not follow you home to do the healing, whether it be physical or spiritual healing, but most especially for making those spiritual baths that he taught me to do, of 9 different leaves, flowers, different herbs, green aspects of the plant, not so much the vines, roots, and barks. And that they had to be collected with prayer. We give thanks to the spirit of water, and then we pray while we mash these herbs in a bucket of water. And those herbs are splashed, that water is splashed over the person as an auric cleanse. So it is, it's just hard to describe verbally the effect that it has on the emotional and the spiritual body of people who are suffering from long-standing spiritual diseases like trauma, childhood trauma, long-standing grief as a result of loss of a loved one, loss of a home through a fire, a recent fright, like being in a hurricane, being in a car accident, and then also long-standing anger. So there's a long list of what we think of as emotional ailments. The Maya lineage of Don Eligio saw those as spiritual ailments that are treated, first of all, with love. I always tell my students of Maya spiritual healing, the first thing we do is stand in love. Don Eligio's life was about love. I always tell people, what does it feel like to be loved? What does it feel like to love another? And that's the energy that you stand in before you begin any type of healing session. Love, faith. You must have faith in what you are doing. You must have faith in the plants, the prayer, the water, and this whole process. Faith in yourself is helpful, but we all have a hard time with that. We all fear we're not going to be enough. Yet I just rely on the spirit of the plants, the spirit of water, because we are not the healers. That's the biggest, most important thing in spiritual healing. Stand in love and recognize that it's not you, but without you, it can't be done. So we gather with love and faith, water, plants, and prayer. Love, faith, water, plants, prayer. And absolute magic healing happens every time. To babies, to elders, to men and women. And it is all so gentle. And it's not the type of shamanic healing where we have to go into the underworld and retrieve a fragment of someone's soul. That works too. That's extremely important and beneficial. But in Don Eligio's lineage, it's not done that way. It's done on the physical plane with love, faith, prayer, water, plants.
Wow, that is gorgeous. And I really want to thank you again so much for sharing with us today because, we were talking about before we started this interview that the value of preserving this wisdom in whatever way we can. And, like you said, Don Eligio was not educated and didn't read and write, and he had this amazing connection to nature that didn't require him to document his knowledge. But as a species, we have moved away from that, and we need to document these things,
Right.
or they will be lost.
Yeah.
And we don't know when and if they will ever resurface. So it's so important to document these things. And so I just
that's a very important point to make.
so I just really want to thank you for being here and for telling the story again, because I know you've told it many, many times. And
always different.
Always different. And it's so beautiful. Also, I was thinking that, so many modern shaman or people who have been trained by people like Don Eligio really live with their feet in two worlds. You're an author, you have a city life, you have foundations that you run, you have all these things that you do, and you carry this precious wisdom.
Thank you. It is precious and it's an honor.
So Rosita, you have also offered our audience a gift, and it is a YouTube celebration of Don Eligio Ponte's life that you recorded last year with the Abdominal Therapy Collective, and it's called Little Altars Everywhere. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what our audience will receive when they visit that video and watch it?
Sure. Little Altars Everywhere was a celebration of anniversary of Don Eligio's birth, perhaps last year, 2 years ago. And we just thought with the Abdominal Therapy Collective which is a group of practitioners who do Don Eligio's abdominal therapy work, that it would be appropriate again, as a historical recording with the pictures, photographs of Don Eligio and his village, and that I would simply sit and tell stories about Don Eligio as a means of preserving those memories and making his deep spiritual message eternal as we can possibly make it, and to share it with future generations. So it's me with photographs and pictures of Don Eligio and the environment and the plants. And
Beautiful. I have had a chance to listen to that, and it's one of the main reasons I was just delighted to have that be a gift for everyone. So I want to say thank you again. And there will be links under this interview for everyone to Rosita's website and to all of her books, to her programs that she runs, and to more information about all of her offerings. And so I invite everyone to scroll down below this video for those links. And thank you again, Rosita. This has been beautiful. And to everyone who is viewing and participating, we thank you for taking time out of your day to be here with us, to really steep in the beauty and the richness and the wisdom that Rosita has shared with us today. And we hope that you will join us for our next interviews around the cosmic fire.